Star Wars Empire at War Expanded Fall of the Republic 1.5 is now released, and in this video we'll be going over some of the major changes made since version 1.4. A big chunk of our focus in the time since 1.4's release was in getting our new mod, Revan's Revenge, off the ground, but there's still plenty of new things to enjoy in Fall of the Republic, along with several systemic changes you may already be familiar with from Revan's Revenge. This video will stick to some of the highlights, but a more full list of changes will be included with the release on the Steam Change Notes page and on our Discord, all of which is linked in the description. If you're already subscribed to the mod on Steam, it will automatically update. Also, this version of the mod requires the 64-bit version of the game to play. This is the default setting, so most people won't have to change anything, but if you have manually changed back to the 32-bit version, you'll need to go back to the 64-bit version. First, there's a lot of quality of life changes to many of our Galactic Conquest systems or tweaks to functionality. For example, some of the important choices in the mod, like the decision to execute Order 65 or 66, have been turned into pop-ups, which you have to decide on once you hit the appropriate level of Senate support. This also comes with a new Nightfall tactical mission for the Order 66 path, and some extra progression for Anakin, where in that path he starts as a raw version of himself before progressing to a cooked Darth Vader upon his first death. For characters like General Grievous, who have similar mechanics in space, giving them multiple lives, an extra bit of flavor has been added, where a shuttle will announce what's happened and fly away with them from their dead ship. Also, in the quality of life category, for things like random missions, a series of particles have been added indicating target planets when a mission is active, and things like planetary shields now also have a particle on the galactic map surrounding the planet, making it much easier to see important galactic information at a glance. This has come along with some other changes to how mission targets are selected. There's still some other changes to be made here and some other improvements we want to do, but things like being told to do something on a locked planet should no longer occur. Hero tiers have also been redone and are hopefully easier to understand. I did a standalone video on how this works before, so I'll link to that rather than go into too much depth here. But for now, there's 11 tiers and higher numbers are better, while the specific traits are currently gone. They'll be re-added in a different, much easier to understand form in the next release. There have been significant mechanical updates and quality of life changes on the tactical level as well, both in space and in land battles. First, and probably most noticeably, the speed changes that we put into Revan's Revenge, making ships faster in space, have also been made in Fall of the Republic. This should make it a bit easier to reposition ships and take advantage of different tactical situations. This is the first step in some other tactical changes we'll be making with significant map overhauls in the future, but we'll talk about more with that in 1.6. Gunship units now spawn in larger groups of several squadrons instead of individual squadrons, making them both more likely to survive and less likely to cause wrist injuries when used. They were always powerful when used in sufficient numbers, and they're always very good at their roles, but this hopefully removes one of the barriers to people giving them a try. Fleet tending has also been updated, with significant rebalancing done to healing amounts, which are now based on flat amounts rather than percentage health, the interval between heal pulses, and healing range as the primary metrics for balancing and differentiating different tiers of fleet tenders. Smaller fleet tenders are also no longer pulling double duty as interdiction mine layers. Mine layers are their own ships now, so some ships that were formerly fleet tenders are now just mine layers, while others are just fleet tenders. For larger units like the CIS's DH Omni, they've been able to keep both. The masses of smaller fleet tenders that were also preventing retreats were just too obnoxious, so this should hopefully feel a lot better. On the ground, the standard Jedi units have all been updated to be more viable, following the same system we deployed in Revan's Revenge 0.5. There are a series of enclaves buildable around the galaxy on marked planets for the Republic, so you should have a few more opportunities to build them as well. The field-based system, where you're able to build additional structures in tactical battles to help you with additional units, has been expanded into different types of structures. On the landing zones worth more population, so 4 through 10, they work the same as before, so it's the same field-based options. But for landing zones worth 1 to 3 pop, there are new field emplacements, which includes turbo lasers, sensor arrays, repair bays, and protective shields. Where the field bases are meant to give you units that help you with map control around other areas in the map, the field emplacements are meant to be defensive structures. But speaking of things buildable in ground battles, most buildable turrets have received a new model for all 3 playable factions as well, removing some more of the placeholder base game assets still present. And this has also been done with several other types of structures, including power generators, hypervelocity guns, and several other structures. Along with this, we stopped yapping and Victoria got to work doing a new set of CIS base buildings, reorganizing the CIS roster into a different set of structures and replacing the also placeholder base game Rebel structure assets that have been used in the past. Since the earliest releases of Fall of the Republic, Clone Legions have been handled as reskins via the presence of specific heroes, and this has been expanded into some new areas. Several CIS fighters have Trade Federation and CIS skin variants used in different situations, and which you can set to whichever you prefer in the options menu. The Republic has also been expanded with a fleet marking scheme setup, which impacts the appearance of Peltas, Architens, Acclamator 1s, and Venators based on hero presence and manual settings. The options here are for the Open Circle fleet, Kuat drive yards, sector forces, and Tapani emblems. Adding to the immersion, significant work has gone into sound effect and voiceover updates across not just units, but also the announcer voices. As with every release, there are several new tactical land maps added for a variety of planets, which you can find on iconic planets like Hypori, Mygeeto, and Anaxes, and random planets you've probably never heard of unless you're a huge nerd like Shreeler and Handuin. Galactic maps have received some attention as well. On the progressive side, you can now start in Era 4, so a whole new set of maps has been added to both the Clone Wars and Known Galaxy maps in all sizes. So that alone is 6 new possible starts. The 7 historical maps have also had some expanded story content, but along with that, many of the existing missions have been recoded from scratch. This should hopefully fix a lot of issues and make them easier to work with in the future, but it is a lot of changes with a lot of potential for things to go wrong, so we'd ask that you please report any issues you find in our Discord's tech support channel or on the bug report thread, which will be open for 1.5 on the Steam Workshop page. We'll be making fixes as possible and necessary to these over the first few weeks following release. There's a lot of different permutations to test there, so the more feedback we can get on that, the better. It's the kind of thing that's really difficult to cover entirely during our testing phase. Finally, there is a whole slew of new units and heroes to play as and against, along with a bunch of other new and updated models to see. The Munificent has some great new art, as does the AAT-1, which now has an additional CIS paint job. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 new unit types in various places throughout the mod, but included among them are the new Devastation, sister ship to the Malevolence, which also got an updated model itself, and the Acclamator battleships and destroyers, which have been added to the Kuat drive yards market system for the Republic. The biggest set of new content for the Hutts, who are on their second release as a playable faction, is a significant expansion of their fighter roster, which was fairly bare bones on its first release. Several of the new fighter types for them become available along their government progression paths. Again, that's just a quick overview of some of the bigger changes, but on behalf of the development team, we hope you enjoy playing this brand new release of Fall of the Republic. There will be a little bit of a gap before we start the beta for Thrawn's Revenge 3.5, as we have a fair bit left to do for the Empire of the Hand there. But that'll be the next release we have coming out before the 0.6 versions of Fall of the Republic and Revenge start. So there's still plenty of content and changes to come. Thanks for watching.